Strawberries are amongst the most valuable crops in my garden, both for saving money at the grocery store and my children's enjoyment. And last year, I almost lost every ripe strawberry to squirrels. Protecting them with plastic bird netting has been frustrating to work with, so this season we sought a better solution: flip-top hardware cloth cages. Because if I don't protect them, I won't get a real harvest from them. For the bottom boxes, I painted 2-inch by 2-inch by 8 feet wood black, with black paint I already had on hand. I wanted the boxes to be about a foot tall when finished, so I cut vertical supports to 9 inches to account for the height of the horizontal 2x2s. Because these boxes are quite long, I added supports to both ends and in the middle to prevent any sagging. Using wood glue and a brad nailer, I connected the pieces together. This is when it starts to come together and start looking like a cage instead of just some pieces of wood. Once the frames were put together, it was time to add the hardware cloth. I'm using a black vinyl coated 1/4-inch hardware cloth. Using a heavy duty stapler, I stapled the hardware cloth to the frame every few inches. I'm not going to lie, using an electric stapler would have made this process a lot more enjoyable and a lot easier on my hands, but I had to use what I had. I later learned that some staples are much better than others for this type of project. These ones are much better because they have the sharp teeth, so they go into the wood much better than like the flat staples. That was a hard lesson to learn. I repeated this process for all 3 boxes on both the front and back sides. In total, I had 6 of these long frames. This is one of those projects that seems like a lot of work up front, but will save a lot of headaches later in the season. I wanted the depth of these boxes to be about 2 feet on the interior, so I created end frames that were exactly 24 inches long and 12 inches high. Then I connected the hardware cloth. I made 2 of these for the very ends, not for each box, because all 3 boxes end up connected together to create one long box. I found that painting the pieces before putting the frames together was much easier than painting the frames after they were all put together, even though I did need to touch up the cut edges. I find it made the painting process feel overall faster. On paper, this design makes sense. The real question is, how is it going to handle the actual bed? Now the exciting part, the outdoor insulation. I made sure that the boxes would fit in the length of the bed, and luckily I was right on the money with my measurements. Using the brad nailer, I connected the end frames to the front and back length pieces, which would have been a lot easier if I had any extra hands, but these spring clamps help keep everything in place while I worked. Then I moved the pieces into place in the strawberry bed. This area is very uneven and these boxes wouldn't sit flat without intervention. This is the part I hadn't fully thought through. Part of me just wanted to work around it, but I know if I don't fix it now, it will annoy me all season. I also noticed that I had a raspberry plant growing in the way of the cage, but I had an empty spot down the row that desperately needed a plant, so it was perfect. To make the cages sit level, I needed to lower the high corner and make a little retaining wall. This also meant I needed to remove the strawberries, which I had hoped to avoid. But if I wanted to get the job done, it needed to be done as right as my skills will allow. Once I had gotten the area level, it was time to try again with the box. And this time the vision was coming together with a nice level box. What is it they say that 20% of the project takes 80% of the time? This section took me so much longer than expected, but I was hopeful that the rest of the installation was going to go a lot faster. And luckily, the rest of the bed was much more level. I decided to keep removing the strawberries as I went along to give the whole bed a reset, but the rest of the process went much faster with fewer leveling needs. As each section was ready, I connected them together and added more bracing for stability. I also replanted the strawberries about a foot apart as each section was complete. Every one of these plants are future handfuls of strawberries, so I'm trying to do this in a way that actually gives them a good chance. I ended up with over 100 extra strawberry babies, which I gave away to some friends, family, and neighbors. It was a nice bonus to this project, because all these plants started with only 10 roots I purchased like 6 years ago. Knowing others would be able to grow some fresh strawberries this season for their families warmed my heart and was a lot of fun. With the boxes leveled and in place, the bulk of the project was complete, and I was very happy with how it was coming together, even with the unexpected time spent on it. Now, one of the most exciting parts of this project, attaching the lids. This is when the project really starts to look good. The lids were made from basic 1x2 pieces of wood painted black. We decided on smaller wood for the lid to keep it nice and light to open. My original plan was to build the same kind of frame as the boxes, but with 2-foot supports instead of the 9 inches. So it would have enough depth to go over the full width of the boxes. But as I had attached the hardware cloth, I realized there wasn't enough support. The hardware cloth seemed to be a little too flimsy for my liking. My solution was to add 2 more 24-inch supports in the center of each of the rectangles, making 4 2 feet by 2 feet squares. I also added 45-degree corner supports to each corner, which helped with the overall structural strength. Because the 1x2s are so thin, I connected everything with staples instead of the brad nailer, since the wood can split very easily. It also added a nice design element, which I think elevated the final product's look. Each lid had 3 hinges, 1 on each side and 1 in the middle. For how long these cages are, 3 is the minimum number of hinges I'd use. 2 hinges wouldn't be enough, especially because these hinges are fairly small to match the lid's small profile. I am so happy with how they turned out. They are both functional and beautiful. And if you're wondering what my plan is to reach the raspberries behind them, I'm planning to make little gardener's footsteps with the kids that I can use as stepping stones to reach into the raspberries behind them. This may not be ideal to some, but for me, it's about making the most of my small space. In my next video, I will share my disastrous first attempt at a raspberry trellis and what we did to fix it.